Hi, it's Doug. When I was a kid, I loved to keep animals as pets. I kept just about everything you can imagine. I kept frogs, I kept lizards, I even kept one of these. It's called an axolotl, and it's a type of salamander. One time, a friend of mine was moving, and he had some fish that he couldn't take with him. So he asked me if I'd like to keep them. I actually had never kept fish before, so I said, sure. I was excited to care for a new kind of pet. Okay, my friend said, first we need to set up the habitat for the fish. So he came over with an empty fish tank, and we started by putting gravel and plants in so that the fish would have places to hide. Then we filled the tank up with water from the sink. Now it turns out water from the sink contains a little bit of chlorine in it, like in pools. It's not enough to harm you when you drink it, but it could harm fish. So you need to put in a few drops of a special chemical to get rid of the chlorine. So we did that. Finally, the habitat was ready. We put the fish into the tank. Now, before he left, my friend gave me a container of fish food and told me to feed the fish a little pinch of food twice every day. Then he said, "Good luck. Keeping fish is really hard." I thought, really? I mean, how hard could it be? It seems like you barely have to do anything. My fish swam happily around their tank, and they were fun to watch, darting around, flashing different colors. But only about a week later, I noticed something looked wrong. Some of them were swimming really slowly, kind of drifting around the water, and occasionally turning upside down. They were still eating and breathing, but they looked sick. What was going on? I checked through everything I knew. I was using the right water without chlorine. I was feeding them the right food, and they didn't look like they had anything wrong on their bodies. What do you think was wrong with the fish? I went to a nearby pet shop to find someone who might know what was going wrong with my fish. I asked an employee who was in charge of the fish section at the store. "I bet we can figure it out," she said. "Let me ask you some questions. First of all, how much are you feeding the fish?" I told her I was only giving a couple of little pinches of it every day. "Okay, that's good," she said. "You don't want to overfeed them." Then she asked about the water I used in the tank. I told her I used sink water treated with a special chemical to take out the chlorine. "Okay, that's good," she said. "Now let me ask, what kind of filter are you using for the tank?" I said, "I don't have a filter." She said, "Well, that's probably it. Your friend probably forgot to give you a filter for the fish tank." She explained, when fish eat, they excrete waste. They poop, just like other animals do. If you don't have a filter for a fish tank, the waste builds up in the water until it becomes really unhealthy for the fish. So I bought a filter that day and I brought it home. After I let the filter run for a few days, my fish started moving around again, and they made a complete recovery. All that I had learned about keeping fish, though, made me curious. Near my house was a small pond. If you looked closely at the water, you could even see fish swimming around in there. But there was no filter hooked up to the pond. Why do you have to clean a fish tank, but not a pond? Waste does build up naturally in a pond, both from fish and from other animals that live in the pond. And it's not just their waste that's a problem. When plants and animals die, their bodies don't have anywhere to go. If you look at the bottom of a pond, you'll find what's called pond muck. It's a mix of waste and dead plant and animal material. Over time, pond muck builds up. There's always a layer of it on the bottom of the pond. And yet, ponds seem to stay healthy even with all that muck. How is that possible? Well, if you look closely at pond muck, like with a microscope, you can start to figure out why. Pond muck is full of microscopic fungi and bacteria, both of which act as decomposers. They break down dead material, like dead leaves, dead insects, and animal waste, releasing micronutrients into the pond. So you see, the reason animals living in a pond don't drown in their own waste is that a pond has decomposers to break that waste down. In my fish tank, there weren't any decomposers to break down waste, so I had to get a water filter to make sure that the waste didn't build up in the first place. But some fish owners actually put decomposers, like certain kinds of bacteria, into their fish tank so that they don't have to just rely on water filters. Now, it might seem like the more decomposers in a pond or fish tank, the healthier your fish. But there's actually a downside to there being too many decomposers. It has to do with the gases that animals and decomposers need to breathe. Just like animals, many decomposers take in oxygen, and they release carbon dioxide, which pond animals can't breathe. So pond animals and decomposers are actually competing for oxygen. The more decomposers you have, the more carbon dioxide there is in the water, and the harder it is for fish to breathe. But can you think of anything that could help lower the amount of carbon dioxide in a pond?